Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Kubernetes by Example Insider, where we like to interview the actual engineers who work on various aspects of Kubernetes so that we can get a sense of where they feel like the project is going. Obviously, you can always talk to product managers or project managers, and those kinds of people. However, both the good thing and the bad thing about open source is often the engineers have direct control over what actually lands. And so we find it useful to actually talk to the engineering community to see where, what they're passionate about, what they want to see happen next. Because I think it gives us some better insights into whether, what's going to happen, basically. So I think we're on our 10th episode, and I would like to welcome our promoted, co-host of Savita, who was on the show. I want to say episode 6 rings a bell. Savita, do you want to? Oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Langdon White. I am currently a faculty member at Boston University in the the Faculty of Computing and Data Sciences. I teach data science as well as some practicum classes doing basically engineering software and machine learning projects for third parties. So that's the program I'm involved with. I was formerly with Red Hat for a long time. And Savita, why don't we have you introduce yourself, and then we will introduce our guest.
Sure. Hi everyone. My name is Savita Raghunathan. I am thrilled to be here on the show. I think I was on episode 5 or 6. It was like 5, 6 months ago, and if the same excitement that I felt sitting on the other side. I am a senior software engineer working on data protection area, and I also contribute to upstream Kubernetes and conveyor community. Um, and I picked up crocheting as my hobby during the pandemic, so that's going on the side. Moving on to our guest of the hour, Sasha. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Savita. Thanks for having me on the show, and nice to see you again. I mean, we already know each other from the release team. So I'm Sasha. I'm one of the contributors. So I consider myself as a contributor to Kubernetes. I work in multiple directions on the project. So I'm part of SIG Release, acting as a chair, but I'm also working with Red Hat on the lower level bits of Kubernetes. So I contribute to projects like the container runtime CRI-O and some related projects as well. So I see myself as an all-rounder in that case. And yeah, I'm happy to be here on the show and to answer any questions.
And I would like to clarify, I appreciate you mentioning, Kubernetes community member, because really that's who we interview. We actually, sometimes it's engineers, but, we've had people who are kind of like on the dev advocacy side. We've had community liaison type people as well. I just have the old, kind of open source contributor auto language right around engineering, which is a bad habit, but one of these days I'll fix it. So thanks so much for coming. One of the things we like to start the show with is what got you into open source in the beginning, or if it's directly Kubernetes, what got you into Kubernetes?
Yeah, I mean, we have to go back in time when answering this question, right? So I was starting to work for software-related projects 10 years ago now, which is amazing for myself because I never had a profession which was that long, right? So it's just the first time I lived the first time. And the idea was I never was really into open source before. So I really started working on software projects. And then I realized that all those companies are using so much open source, even if they don't contribute to open source at all. And then I thought, okay, those companies would probably not exist at all if there wouldn't be open source. So there's a whole economy hidden behind this huge open source effort many folks are driving in upstream. And yeah, this got me into open source, actually. And I was more and more interested in I started with creating my own projects. And surely I failed because I failed very often because those projects, nobody really had interest in, or they are solving a particular problem, which is out of scope of other problems. And then I was iterating on those cycles. And when I was getting more and more interested in new technologies, for example, programming languages like Rust, then I started to understand that I have to contribute, that I have to bring myself into a community, contribute to them, and then get something back in terms of being part of that community. And at some other company, there was a project where we had to create a microservice application which had the boundaries that it should be highly available and it should be for free, for sure. So we had been choosing Kubernetes, and I had the chance to work myself very deeply into the Kubernetes stack. So this was at the time of 1.12, so not in early stages of Kubernetes, but it was some years ago. And therefore, I worked myself into Kubernetes. We created an application stack, and I had a chance to teach my knowledge to my colleagues. And this was really an amazing experience from my point of view. But in the end, it wasn't enough. So I really wanted to be part of that community. And I was actively searching for a company who is contributing to that project. And therefore, I came to SUSE, and then I came to Red Hat. And I'm really happy that there are companies around those projects and who continuously contribute to Kubernetes.
So I wanted to ask you about that. First up, I think I'm pushing 25 years. So yeah, I know what you mean. But next, I was going to say, you mentioned community, I don't know, 7-8 times in that statement. What is it about a community? What's it giving you that's kind of over and above, kind of writing code, right? Or, or getting validation for building software?
Yeah, I would compare it to actually using the possibilities the internet or the modern internet provides to us, right? So information is everywhere, so we can learn everything without having the need to interact with people. But I would say having the opportunity or learning by coding software, for example, makes it way more easy to fastly learn things directly from people who already know it, and that's the real benefit. So I don't see it. I see the benefit company wise when looking at a higher level, but I really appreciate this opportunity to get in touch with people directly by using a chat, by going to a meeting, or by just texting them, and then getting the information we actually want to have. And I think this drives innovation and on the overall project.
I think you bring up a really good point. I think software, kind of engineering or whatever, is often considered to be kind of a lone, or loner activity, right? But it really isn't in a lot of ways. And one of the things I mention a lot, actually, that I've found really interesting, basically over the course of the pandemic, is the growth of Twitch in kind of the engineering community, because it is a really good way to connect with another developer where you can kind of watch somebody else program, right? And as odd as that sounds, it's a really good way to kind of learn. Like what I often say is, like, if you watch an expert fail, watching them and what they do to get out of that failure, I think teaches you as much or more about like how to be a good programmer than almost any other mechanism, because it's so hard to teach that, and it's one of the things you only get really through experience. But I think with something like Twitch, you get a lot of opportunities to kind of see it in action. I was actually talking about this with a medical doctor the other day, and medical doctors do something similar, except they basically fake these scenarios, right? And then they go through, and it's kind of a continuous training exercise, but they fake them. The nice thing about the Twitch is, nobody, we can do it for real, and nobody has to like die or be ill, to learn from real examples, in a sense. So I was going to hand it to Savita. Did you want to ask a question at this time, or?
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to add something to what Sasha said. Like, it's also so for the Kubernetes community is a little special. For me, I was searching for the a sense where I would belong, and I found it there. In addition to all the innovation and stuff like that, and I bet it is the same way for so many folks who are like looking for that kind of bonding Even though I haven't seen many, I haven't seen Sasha, I haven't seen like many of the contributors I worked with like 2 years. But for me, I just feel like it's my happy place. Just put it in like 2 words. So I do have one question for Sasha. This is something that I struggle with. I know like you have a full-time job, you are a maintainer for CRI-O, you do an amazing job with SIGComp profile and the new features that's getting released in Kubernetes. I think it's gone beta or it has gone beta, the default SIGComp profile. It was my favorite feature, by the way, in 1.22. And you also do you're also the chair of SIG Release. So how do you manage these things in addition to having work-life balance?
Good question. Thank you for this feedback in the first place. I'm really trying to separate my work time from my spare time, especially since I'm working at home since a couple of years now, and we have a little toddler, so this 2-year-old is running around, and you have to focus on your work still, even if he's back from nursery and things like that. But to me, it's like finding or focusing for a dedicated amount of time. So I started contributing to CRI-O, but I'm completely sure that I can't keep up the same pace in the beginning, which I had in CRI-O, for example, when starting to contribute or continuing to contribute to Kubernetes or focusing on features. So I'm really happy, for example, that in Kubernetes, this whole release cycles exist. So we can have dedicated points in time where we can focus. I can focus on enhancements in the beginning when I'm planning for enhancements in the next cycle, for example. I can, for example, also take myself off of those enhancements for one complete release cycle and then focus, like I did for 124, focus on the container image signing project. So I just can only focus myself on a bunch of projects in parallel. And when we talk about this on a weekly basis, then only on 1 or 2 per week. So, and I think the key is to not to be fast everywhere, but I think the key is to make progress everywhere over a certain amount of time. So the community kind of trusts you that you, when you lay down some work, that you come back and pick it up. And if you have committed on something and you also come later on and pick those work up and finish it and bring it over the finishing line, which is one of the biggest problems we have probably in Kubernetes, then they trust you that you will do this also for other parts of the project. And I think this is the key. You don't have to be fast everywhere, but it's important that you make progress everywhere you commit on.
So incremental progress everywhere is more important than major progress in any given spot.
Yeah, I mean, iterating is also a good point, right? So not everything has to be perfect in the first place. I mean, if we speak about enhancements in Kubernetes, then they have to be on a certain quality level, so they have to be docs and tests and things like that. But if we speak about the container image signing, for example, then we knew that that we can work iteratively over the whole cycle because it will not go live until the end of the cycle, something like this.
Right. I was going to comment, you look remarkably sane for a toddler. I've had 3 at some point or another. My youngest is now 13, so I'm a little past those years, which is very nice. But yeah, it's tough. So congratulations. So I was going to bring up kind of the security profiles operator. I know that's something you wanted to talk about. So if you could tell us a little bit more about what that is and why it's important.
Yeah, I thought this is a really great project from my point of view. We started it probably 2 years ago now. And the main idea was that we have one issue in Kubernetes that when we speak about SecComp profiles, that we have to distribute them over a whole cluster, that all profiles have to be available. I know that there are some other solutions around it, how to solve it, but the overall end-to-end user handling is not that optimal. And it's not even optimal right now. And there were some approaches in solving that, which had some other drawbacks. And I was just sitting together with those folks who were working on the overall solution. And then we started to think about, hey, can we solve this as an out-of-tree enhancement? And then later on decide if we can bring it back into Kubernetes. We are now at the point where we have it as an out-of-tree enhancement, and we have a bunch of features in it, which are great. And now we are at a point where we have to battle-proof those features. So, for example, we are working right now on bringing it to Operator Hub I/O, and then later on integrating it as an optional feature into OpenShift to get a bit bigger user base on the operator. And the overall, so it solves the issue of not only distributing seccomp profiles. I think the main issue with seccomp is that it starts with creating the profiles for workloads. Because people don't understand. I even didn't understand it if I had initially read some articles about seccomp, how it works under the hood, and how to create such a profile, right? How to decide which syscall should I add or for which architecture and things like that. So we are evaluating different ways of recording those profiles, and we have 2 right now. We can parse, for example, log files, and then we have also utilizing ePPF to record those profiles. So those are optional. And the interesting part is now that we also have maintainers which really work tightly together with C Linux policies, and they integrated the recording feature for C Linux policies as well. So, I mean, the project is growing, and also the folks working on AppArmor, for example. So we have those 3 security features, seccomp, AppArmor, and C Linux, which are in scope of this operator. And all 3 have mainly the same problem of distributing the policies and also creating those policies. And that's what the operator is trying to solve.
Yeah, I don't know that there's all that many people who truly understand seccomp, in general. It's actually interesting about particularly SD Linux. A number of years ago, we were working on the Modularity project, right? And one of the challenges there, which I think is shared in kind of a containerized world, is that all the policies were shoved into one package, right? Because when you're thinking about a monolithic operating system, right, the key is to kind of minimize the downloads in a sense. And so we had to split a lot of that stuff apart. Another example, right, is the not GCC, but I think, like basically the translations for the compiler, I think it was the compiler, also had kind of a similar problem, where basically you had like every translation in the bucket, and breaking it apart is, a whole exercise in and of itself. So I think you have the problem kind of on both sides of that equation. Both, it's like, how do you get them out there? But then also, how do you get out there only the kind of minimal amount of stuff that you want to land in the target? So it's been I think, I would say going on, 7 or something years now, a major effort to really think about how the distribution works to redistribute things in ways that we can target, a containerized world. I just say it's one of those things. I haven't worked on it myself all that much. I've been more like a beneficiary of it. But I find it fascinating that, it's just so different. And I think people don't realize how monolithic our operating systems have actually become, even though they have continuous delivery, and things like that, because, but it's still a monolith,
Yeah, I mean, we have the same problem, or I mean, I don't think it's a problem. It's just a different kind of software architecture, but we have the same for Kubernetes, right? So we release Kubernetes at certain points in time, and we have a bundle of monolith, and we have a monolith, and this creates a bunch of components, and those are highly related to each other. So,
right. All right, I'm gonna hand it back to Savita. Did you want to talk about something else?
So I wanted to add that the SecComp profile. I used to be an administrator in a previous life, so all I cared about is like having something that would work without having to know everything about it. Because if I start digging deeper and deeper, then I wouldn't be able to support any features for the platform, right? I was designing and working on supporting a platform as a service using Kubernetes, and these little things add to it. And security is an administrator's nightmare, everyone's nightmare, and it has to be implemented right. And when I look at the SecComp profile operator, all I see is that it's a one-stop shop because it tackles so many things, so many profiles, and like you mentioned, like three of those things, app armor and two other things which I cannot think about. The one thing that I can think about is that I did see something related to PSP, and now that we have duplicated PSP, or we are going to duplicate PSP in 1.25, which is like pod security policies, and do you have any idea to support pod security admission controller and PSS pod security standards as a part of the operator? So that is one thing that I wanted to know because I was just curious. Not that I work in the admin world anymore, but I like to dab into it whenever I get some time.
Yeah, I mean the problem is always those upgrade and downgrade paths, right? So I mean, pod security policies they will be removed, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
1.25. Yeah.
Yeah, they are already deprecated and they will be removed. Yeah, in favor of those admission controllers. Yes. Yeah, I mean, we would like to go for example, making Kubernetes more secure out of the box is something we probably cannot do by just moving features from the security profiles operator into Kubernetes, because those features are already so complex that they have a different, so we would never get them in. But we would have to go baby steps. So for that, for example, this SecCom default feature, which applies the runtime default profile to all workloads in a cluster. Right now, it's just a kubelet feature flag. And if we enable it, then end users of the cluster will probably not know that it's enabled, because it's only visible to the administrators. And if you run a container, then you can inspect the container and see the SecCom profile, for example. But the user, which usually don't have access to those lower level parts, will not see that it's using runtime default and therefore probably fail. So, and the next iteration from my point of view would be to make this visible to the end user, so make it API aware and provide some upgrade and downgrade paths. And this is the tricky part. So we could probably say, okay, we apply the feature only to new workloads, but we cannot really distinguish new workloads from rescheduled workloads. So the complexity in Kubernetes would also then increase a lot. So, but really, I think, for example, we plan to remove the annotations, the SecComp annotations in 125, and I'm pretty sure that this will also lead into upgrade issues by some users. So even if you mentioned it in the changelog, it will cause some disturbance, and this that's a thing. That's a thing where I'm not sure if we say we support a bunch of releases for some features, and then we remove it, and then we always have some troubles about people not going this upgrade path. And usually, for example, OpenShift solves this by adding custom logic on top of it. And I'm not sure my question would be then, how could we achieve something like this in Kubernetes without having this whole upgrade downgrade logic, right? I mean, this is something we probably really struggle in the community.
So for our viewers, though, like we should definitely, it's something to be, excuse me, very aware of, kind of in the 125 timeframe of, this may impact your workloads. This is something you should be following. Otherwise, you might get bitten. What do you foresee as a way to make sure the community is aware of those changes?
Yeah, I mean, this
Or
brings me back.
Is that the challenge? Yeah.
That's the challenge, but probably a different software. I mean, we speak about software architecture, and when we consider something like a rolling release for a distribution, then we decouple those components of the distributions. We always have dedicated packages, but we can't really. Need some testing which ensure that the packages work together, right, in their versions. And I don't think that Kubernetes is made to go this route, and I think that's also why we mainly decided to go from 4 releases to 3 releases per year, because the architecture drives the way how we release it, and that's the way how it is. I mean,
I gotcha.
There will be always people who will complain, but it's not a big deal. I mean, we are happy to solve that by some distributions or things like that, right? So that's the way why that's the reason why OpenShift and things like that exist. So
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's there is value to be added, on top of many open source projects, that and ease of upgrades, ease of use, those are often a very big part of it. I did want to ask you, because I put out some tweets about it, about supply chain security, and your thoughts on, or potentially the collective thoughts of the release team, on improving the supply chain security of the Kubernetes release pipeline.
yeah, I think we have to. When did we start with that? I mean, there were some parallel efforts in Kubernetes, which we consolidated into our roadmap and vision. And this vision kind of drives our overall effort in release engineering and the release engineering sub-project of Kubernetes. And one part of that is the Sascha compliance and the Sascha compliance. And before that, we were rewriting our whole tooling from Bash into some Golang libraries to be reusable and split them across 3 different repositories right now. And this gave us the opportunity to, after that transition, to do some refactoring on top of that, and also think about the Salsa compliance and the secure supply chain overall story. And this is also the headline for our roadmap and vision. So it's about an introspectable, consumable, and secure supply chain. And the secure part of that is the overall Sascha compliance when we speak about container image signing, artifact signing, and also image promotion. All those topics are huge for itself, and we own a bunch of caps, I think 3 caps around this topic right now. But the idea is to iteratively start working on it, and we started with container image signing in 1.24, which is now implemented. So it's great. It's a great achievement of our special interest group from my point of view, because we managed to get all folks on board. So release managers who said they struggle with finding out what they want to do, finally had an idea about what is the MVP of this container image signing, and also contributed to it. And we have, I'm not sure how many, 5 to 6 different persons working on this MVP over the whole cycle. And we finally delivered it. And I think that's a great achievement. And I think that's how it should work.
I am so excited with the Kubernetes release engineering's effort into like Salsa. And I also do a little bit of sub-project running with SIG Security, and I see a lot of folks involved from SIG Security, and there is this cross collaboration between SIG Release and SIG Security and many other SIGs within a Kubernetes ecosystem. So for those who are watching, a SIG is a special interest group like verticals within Kubernetes community, where each SIG focuses on one component and they work together. So I just wanted to give a little background for the viewers. So I'm excited. And there is also the recent release. I know the release 1.21 RC, the release candidate, I think it's supposed to be container. It's supposed to container images. The container images have been signed, and I was so excited to see that you can verify it. So there was this tweet by one of my good friend who created this little demo, and you can see it in action, and that is like it made me smile. So it made me happy. I know, like, little things. So I just wanted to say, like, kudos.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. I mean, this is really cool. I mean, we thought about, do we have to provide something to verify the signatures, or what can we do? But at the end, this brings me back to my contributions to CRI-O, because the container runtime folks, which also maintain the lower level bits of CRI-O, are working in parallel on bringing container image signing. So we will probably see it again in CRI-O, and then we can close the loop, right? So from the uppermost container image signing back to the verification of the signatures directly in the runtime. So this is amazing to my point of view.
So you mentioned it a little bit in passing, but I wanted to kind of elaborate on it. The release cycle has moved from 4 times a year to 3 times a year. What do you think that means kind of for the project?
I think it was really necessary. We kind of, in the past release cycles, we kind of pressed the release cycle into the time frame. And now we don't gain that much. We gain 4 to 5 weeks per release probably. And this gives us a huge relaxation on the SIG release side and also on the development side. I already I can plan better with features. It did not had a big effect on downstream, so they just adapted the new release cycle, which is great. So we did a survey. We just have to evaluate the results, the final results. And I really think that the 3 releases per year is great. We had a delay this time, about 2 weeks, because of the Golang minor update. And now we are at a point, so this discussion is pretty fresh, but we have to reach a consensus if we want to start, for example, after KubeCon, because we always consider the time in KubeCon as something where developers are not available at all. And this would also give us it's a bit pressuring because we have to put the next 2 releases until the end of the year, and we don't want to stop in December 20th or something like this. So mid-December is the deadline for that. But we can also go for a shorter release. So this is totally doable. I mean, it gives us more flexibility in planning. That's really great.
So what you're thinking is that the 3 releases won't be as fixed. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, exactly.
So they'll be gotcha.
Exactly. Some folks are talking about 4-month releases, but that's not true. We are talking about 3 releases per year, right? So
right.
We can also go for 1 long and 2 short.
So we actually had a question from the audience. Actually, well, let's keep going, and I'll let me ask the audience member a question before I ask. Savitha, did you want to follow up on that? Did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I wanted to ask, did you hear anything positive about moving the cadence? And, from 4 to 3 was a shocker for so many folks, and everyone's getting used to it. Personally, I love 3 releases per year because I can finally catch up. Otherwise, it was like I was just running behind the features without even understanding what they are. That's how it felt for me. But from other company perspective and other developer perspective, I understand that now they have to plan so ahead and then implement, because if they miss one release, then they just have to wait for another. That makes the feature graduation the cycles longer, and it can push the graduations, the feature, and the same thing. I'm repeating myself. So do you have any insight to that, or did you hear anything positive about it, negative about it? If you could share with us, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I just heard positive things, to be honest, but maybe that's because I'm acting as a chair for SIG Release. No, I'm thinking. So from our survey perspective, so from downstream consumers, we only got positive feedback so far because it seems to be more relaxing right now, and it gives more time for planning and retrospectives and things like that. On the other side, I think it did not change anything to the cycle itself when it comes to deadlines and the stress before deadlines. I mean, we also have those product readiness reviews which have to be done, this enhancements deadline and things like that. So I think it changes not much on that perspective. On the graduation itself, I think it was good because I'm not sure if that's already done, but I thought that SIG architecture is having a better guidance to when to graduate features and how many release cycles we want to wait before graduating a feature, for example. What recently changed is that beta releases are not enabled per default anymore because they are not considered as stable. And a decision like this already has a huge impact on the community, right? So because if I have now an alpha feature and I plan to graduate it, because then I would like to provide it to my downstream consumers, then it's not enabled per default anymore. So I have to enable it manually. Oh, that's one point. So I think the change of the cadence has impact on many aspects of the project we are probably also not aware of. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I also want to give another shout out to the well run release team Shadow program, which is so successful that I hope to see it getting adopted by other other SIGs within Kubernetes org, which is already happening. I see a lot of shadow programs, and I think it's so successful that it can be adopted across many other open source projects as well. So I have benefited personally, and that's there. Like it's this that's been a really great thing. So I just wanted to like highlight and say like when I think SIG release, I think of the release team shadow program.
Yeah, and you joined SIG release in 118, right? And you were
Yeah,
part until 122, so for 4 releases,
yeah.
which is really great time. And you led 122. I mean, really, I would like to give this shout out back to you.
Thank you. I couldn't have done without all the support of the community. So thanks. And moving back to Langdon, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, I was gonna actually take it slightly differently. So upcoming releases, what are you most excited to see land? Whether whether they're things you did or things that other people have done. What are the things that you think are most important to be watching kind of going forward?
Are we talking about 124 or 125? Because I'm
You
interested
decide.
in,
I was kind of saying like kind of the next few releases,
yeah.
whether it's the next one or the one after that or both or
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting perspective, right? Because from a developer perspective, I'm already in planning for 125, and for folks who want to upgrade, they are probably reading the release notes for 124. So I'm really excited about the Docker shim removal because we can clean up some code afterwards, not only from a user's perspective, but from a code organizational perspective, and also testing. And so this has a huge impact to test infra and things like that. It's great. Yeah, for 124 for sure. I love that we have the container image signing in. That's also a great feature. And for 125, I'm really looking forward to also not, for example, small things like removing the seccomp annotations is something which really reduces the logic. For example, when it comes to converting those annotations to the profile fields and the other way around. So we can remove a bunch of code. And this also will automatically increase the security because having less code means higher security, right? So that's really cool. And we also have some changes under the hood, which are about the container runtime interface. So we have introduced some kind of versioning from V1 Alpha 2. It was years ago V1 Alpha 2, and then we graduated it to V1 because it hasn't been changed. It has only some fields have been added over the past years. And that's also now a point where we can remove the support for V1 Alpha 2, and therefore we can remove huge amount of conversion code in between those versions and things like that. So that's something where I'm really looking forward to. But it's probably not the most fanciest features. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of why I asked the question, right? Is that I want to know what your perspective of the of what's kind of upcoming. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, as I know you both are very aware, is there's a certain event happening in Spain relatively soon, and I think you're both pretty involved. I wanted to be involved and then couldn't actually make the travel happen, so. Can you tell me a little bit about KubeCon? Maybe I believe you're both presenting, but Sasha, if you could tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking about.
Yeah, unfortunately, I cannot attend in person as well. There was a bit of back and forth in discussion, and then I decided to not go because you can get all this content also virtually. I know there is this whole get together and things like that, but yeah, I'm looking forward to have a chance in North America by the end of the year. But yeah, I have 3 talks, but it's not like that they fall into the same category, right? because we have this CRI-O update talk, which is something we really do every time, and I think it's really important for the community and also for us to get new maintainers on board to give an update on CRI-O, what we plan and what we achieved in the past, and also to reflect for us as maintainers. Then we have the SIG Release update, which is necessary from my point of view, because we hadn't it probably last year. We had only one or two. We only had one. And this is really something I'm looking forward to. And then there is this, where I'm personally proud of, is the SecCom talk where I can present how we can craft custom SecCom profiles. And I'm kind of proud of it because I did the submission alone, and it went into the conference by the usual track, right? So the usual reviewers decided to give this talk a chance, and I think there are only 11 or 12 talks from all submissions now part of the overall schedule, which is really amazing because this totally trims down to only let a small amount of percentage go through this whole review process.
No, definitely. Go ahead, Savita.
I'm so excited. Oh, no worries. I'm excited to go watch that, like whenever it streams, the SecCom profile, because we talked a bit about it today, and I did my research, and I'm like super excited to go to the one, in addition to other maintainer sessions at KubeCon. And the thing that I like the most is that some of these can be, since they will be available on the YouTube, so you're not in a hurry. Like, you can watch and rewatch, and you know how to reach out to the maintainer or like the presenter, so you can always like have questions, reach out to them. So that is one of the things that came out of this pandemic. The conference is moving virtual. I learned how to connect with people virtually. And yes, back to KubeCon, I have like 3 sessions, but one of them is a maintainer track for SIG security, which I am excited about. They are awesome bunch of people to work with. They create a very warm, welcoming, safe space. And I'm so proud to be a part of that session. And another one is about burnout. I signed up for way too many things because I wanted to
like
give back
talks
to the
at KubeCon.
Oh, no, I love KubeCon. I get to meet my favorite people. I get to meet new people. So I won't call it toxic, but tiring. Tiring KubeCon. I would call that. I'm an introvert, so it's tiring and exhausting. And for after KubeCon for a week, I don't want to meet or talk to anyone. So definitely training. So I have that one about burnout. Another one is a students panel. So I'm happy about that. KubeCon now has a student track, because those are the future, right? Future of open source, future of engineering, and future is in the hands of students. So having a space for students is like wonderful. When I was a student, I didn't have these many resources. Now I see like how much we can help and give back, and start nurturing from when they are like, like from a little seedling. That's how I love plants, so I'm just sticking back to the plant analogy, if that makes sense. So like nurture them, like provide them with all the resources. So these are the little things that I love, and I'm like so happy to be a part of. And I'm a little bummed, Sasha. I was hoping that I will see you in person, but there is always another KubeCon, right? This is the beauty of KubeCon. You don't have to feel like you're missing out. There is always another one. The same for Langdon. I was excited that he's gonna go to KubeCon EU, but no, I will see him at KubeCon NA, probably. So
Yeah, but Detroit versus Valencia. Maybe we could have KubeCon NA also in Valencia. But yeah, I totally hear you. Yeah, it would have been nice to be able to get to see some people. Being back to traveling a little bit. Speaking of students, I would also, being a college professor, that was part of why I joined. That's why I kind of decided to get into academics, is try to see how we could point students kind of in the right direction towards, software engineering. A big part for me has actually been trying to build out on ethics and on, making sure underrepresented minorities are, supported and encouraged. So those are some really important things to me. So I totally agree. So we're coming out on time. We still have a few more minutes, but I did want to ask, so Sasha, I was looking around. Usually I try to find a hobby or something to talk about on the show. However, you seem to be a lot like me in that the only hobbies you really have are also technology. Is that fair to say, or is there something else that you're super into as well?
Yeah, I mean, hobbies, right? So hobbies come and go. I mean, this little toddler is kind of my hobby now.
Yeah.
When speaking about spare time, but I'm really into making barbecue, right? So this is something. So cooking, grilling, and all those kind
I
of
am
stuff.
also super into cooking.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
that's
So
true.
what did you barbecue most recently?
Most recently, we did pizza on a pizza stone.
Nice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just did a pulled pork over the weekend, so I
Yeah.
totally understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And funnily enough, there's actually there's a Cosmopolitan magazine, which is largely targeted as a kind of a women's magazine from, I think it's 1969, that encourages women to get into programming because it's just like having a dinner party. You build a recipe and then you follow the recipe, and it's funny how much, like, how accurate that feels to me, and I think that's why cooking really appeals to me. It's kind of like programming. They're very, very similar in a lot of ways for me.
Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, also the time aspect is interesting, right? So some things you can't cook fast. You have to take
Right.
your time, and that's the same for software as well.
Yes, exactly. And I much prefer the things that go fast. A lot of the time I prefer to make a stir fry than I do a smoked pork. But I like the smoked pork result at least as much. All right. So Savita, did you have another question or any other comments you wanted to make?
No, I think I am done with all the questions. The common though is that I love eating when you were talking about the cooking part because I cannot follow a recipe. I cannot follow anything to the T. I struggle, and every time I end up making something new. It'll taste yummy. At least my husband says that because he has to live with me every day. Uh, so, but I can never follow. So I have like much respect. Like when someone says, "Oh, I baked this, I made this, and I spent like 4 hours marinating this," I'm like, you're god level to me. I'm impatient. I just have to have a healthy meal and like preparation time 15 minutes. And eating time is like inhaling the food, so I'll be like done at like 5 minutes. So but the only food that I love I take time is pizza. So that's fair.
Yeah, what's funny is my kids have actually regularly asked me, "Is like, why didn't you ever become like a chef? You're a pretty good cook. You enjoy cooking," and because the reason is I don't want to make things the same way every single time. Which, if you're a good chef, that's what you do, right? In a restaurant, right? Is you find a really good recipe and then you make it exactly the same way every single time. So, Savita, I don't think you're in the wrong place making it differently each time. As long as it's going, upward. As long as it's getting better. But I have definitely had some pretty massive fails with, making it up as I go along. All right. So I think maybe we should wrap it there. We're a little early, but I think that's okay. And we will encourage everyone to, find Sasha, find Savita at KubeCon, whether it's virtually or in person. Definitely you should try to attend, watch some of these talks. It's another good way to get involved in the community, both from a perspective of trying to understand what's happening and who is impacting the project, as well as getting an idea of what's coming forward in the future. We'll probably recap a bit of KubeCon in our next episode. I think that was it. But yeah, hopefully we're going to have a nice big KBE presence at the next KubeCon in NA, and we'll be finally maybe out of the COVID, but we all continue to cross our fingers. Good luck with the toddler, and And both of you, good luck with KubeCon. And thanks so much for coming, everybody. And we'll talk to you all again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you, everyone. Have a